Hello everyone, this is Dr. Kazi, and in this video we will learn about pituitary gland, its relation with the hypothalamus, as well as the hormones secreted by the anterior and the posterior pituitary. Now this gland is known as the master gland of the body because it controls the secretion of all other endocrine glands in our body. This is also known as the hypophysis cerebri. Have a look at this diagram. The anterior and the posterior pituitary is connected with the hypothalamus by a stalk known as the pituitary stalk. This is 0.5 to 1 gram in weight and 1 centimeter in diameter. It is located in the sella turcica of the sphenoid bone. Now, the sphenoid bone is a butterfly-shaped bone in our skull. It has a cavity known as the sella turcica. So this anterior and the posterior pituitary gland is situated in that sella turcica. Have a look at the pituitary stalk, which connect the hypothalamus with the anterior and the posterior pituitary. This stalk is also known as the hypophyseal stalk. The anterior pituitary, because of its embryonic derivation, can be called as the adenohypophysis because it developed from the root case pouch. But the posterior pituitary is called as the neurohypophysis because it developed from the neural tissue outgrowth. Now, this explains the control of the anterior and the posterior pituitary. Anterior is mainly controlled by the hormonal regulation, while the posterior is controlled by the nervous signal. In between the two lobes, the anterior and the posterior pituitary, we have the pars intermedia. Have a look. This is known as the pars intermedia, and it is a avascular zone. That means it has no blood supply and it is less developed in humans. Now have a look at the cells of the anterior and the posterior pituitary. Let's get rid of the hypothalamus and focus on the anterior and the posterior pituitary. The hormones secreted by the anterior are 6 in number. These are the major hormones, while the posterior will secrete only 2 hormones, the oxytocin and the antidiuretic hormones. Let's have a look at the cells of the anterior pituitary, which will secrete these 6 major hormones. Remember, there are 5 cells which will secrete 6 hormones. Also, the cells are located in the anterior pituitary. The one is somatotrophs, also called as the acidophiles. Now, why we call the somatotrophs acidophiles? Because when we stain these cells with acidic dyes, they are stained darkly. So we call them somatotrophs acidophiles. And in certain tumors of the pituitary gland, which produce the excessive human growth hormone, we call that it is the acidophilic tumor because it is related with the somatotroph, and somatotroph release human growth hormone. Now these are very abundant and the major type of cells found in the anterior pituitary, 30 to 40%. The corticotrophs will secrete the adrenocorticotrophic hormones, and they are 20% in abundance. The human gonadotrophs will secrete the very 2 important hormone, the follicle stimulating hormone and the luteinizing hormone, very important in ovulation and the testes, testosterone and the sperm production. The electrotrophs will secrete the prolactin, and the thyrotroph will secrete the thyroid stimulating hormones. Now, the neurons, which will secrete the posterior pituitary hormones, are the magnocellular neuron, and their cell bodies are located in the paraventricular and the supraoptic nuclei. Now these 2 nuclei are located in the hypothalamus. The magnocellular neuron cell bodies are in the nuclei, but their exoplasm, or the terminal portion, will travel towards the posterior pituitary and release the hormones. The magnocellular neuron transport the neurons hormones in the form of the exoplasm. Now, the hypothalamus will control the anterior pituitary with the help of the hormonal signal, but the posterior pituitary is controlled with the help of the nervous signal because of the embryonic derivation of these 2 glands is different. One is from the neural tissue and the other is from the stomodium. I will discuss that in a separate video. The anterior pituitary is majorly controlled by the hypothalamus, releasing and the inhibitory factors. Let's have a look at the blood supply of the anterior pituitary. We know that the anterior pituitary is a very vascular gland. It has the capillary sinuses among the glandular cell. What is the purpose of these capillary sinuses among the glandular cell? The capillary sinuses will surround the cells of the anterior pituitary, the 5 cells, to secrete the hormones. Because there is no direct connection between the hypothalamus and the anterior pituitary, we have a special type of blood vessel system known as the hypothalamus hypophyseal portal system. We have the capillary beds in the lowermost portion of the hypothalamus. The vessels will penetrate the median eminence. This is a connection between the anterior pituitary and the hypothalamus. The vessels will penetrate the median eminence and form the hypothalamus hypophyseal portal system. The neuron synthesized in the hypothalamus will travel with the help of this portal system towards the anterior pituitary to release the hormones. The neurons, hypothalamus, the nerve fibers are penetrating the 2 portions of the hypothalamus, the tuber cinereum and the median eminence. Tuber cinereum is merely the extension of the hypothalamic tissue into the hypothalamus. Hypothalamic releasing hormones majorly control the secretion of the anterior pituitary, and the hypothalamic inhibitory hormone, it doesn't have much effect on the control of the anterior pituitary hormone except for one hormone, which is prolactin. Now let's have a look at the hypothalamic hormones, or the releasing and the inhibitory factors regulating the release of the hormones from the anterior pituitary. We have the thyrotrophin releasing hormone, which will act on the thyrotrophs of the anterior pituitary to release the thyroid stimulating hormone, and this will act on the thyroid gland to secrete the T3 and the T4, increase the metabolic rate of the body. We will discuss that in a separate video. Then we have the corticotrophic releasing hormone, act on the corticotrophs of the anterior pituitary to release adrenocorticotrophic hormone. Now the next is growth hormone regulating hormone and the growth hormone inhibitory hormone. These both will act on the somatotrophs of the anterior pituitary to secrete or inhibit the human growth hormone. So the next is the gonadotrophin releasing hormone, which will either release the follicle stimulating hormone or the luteinizing hormone. So the prolactin inhibitory factor is also called as the dopamine, and it will inhibit the secretion of the prolactin. In the next series of videos, we will discuss every hormone one by one, starting with the growth hormone, and then the thyroxine, triiodothyronine, and then insulin and glucagon. Stay tuned, and I will see you in the next video.